My name is Mohammed, and I am 18 years old. I am in love with stories about Jinn and the myths that surround them. My library was filled with books that talk about them, and it's impossible for a day to pass by without reading at least one story about them. One day I read a book that discussed the traits and names of Jinn, and it was called The World of Jinn. However, at the end of the book, there was a note that read, "Now, dear reader, if you want to learn more about our world, all you have to do is read this phrase." The phrase was strange, written in what seemed like cryptic symbols. I was puzzled at first. Should I read that strange phrase or not? Finally, I decided to read it because I wanted to know more about their world and satisfy my curiosity. The moment I finished reading the phrase, the electricity in the house went out suddenly. At first, I was terrified, but then I told myself, what am I afraid of? It's just a short circuit. I grabbed my phone and started calling out to everyone in the house, but no one answered. Could they all be sleeping? No, that's impossible. It's only 8 in the evening. While I was lost in thought, the power returned. I wanted to check on everyone, so I ran to their rooms, but I found no one in the house. Could they have all left without telling me? No, that's impossible, but where are they? Where did everyone go? I rushed to the window to see if they were in the garden, and that's when the horror hit me. I couldn't move an inch, and my eyes didn't blink. Is what I'm seeing real? But why is blood pouring from them? Who killed them? Who killed my family? They were all sitting on chairs around the table in the garden, but they were headless corpses. Their heads were cut off and placed on the table in front of them. Will they kill me too? Am I going to die this way? No, I don't want to die. I'm still young. I ran to my room and locked the door, and in my sheer fear, I couldn't even cry for the family I just lost. I took out my phone to call the police and report what happened when suddenly I heard a terrifying voice behind me say, "You caused your family's death. This is the price you paid for delving into our world. Welcome." I froze in place, my limbs went cold, and the hair on my body stood up. I stood still for about 10 minutes before I turned around, but I found no one. I felt a bit relieved. I called the police to inform them of my family's murder. Less than 10 minutes later, the police arrived at my house, shocked by the scene they saw in the garden. Despite my terrible mental state, I was taken to the station for questioning. After I called the police, I hid all the books related to Jinn in the basement of the house, inside one of the old boxes so that the police wouldn't find them. The officer started questioning me, asking where I was at the time of the crime. I told him I was studying for exams in my room since it was the final exam period. Despite my attempts to clear myself, they didn't believe any of my stories. How could my whole family die without me noticing? And why was I the only one left alive? The suspicions were on me, but since they had no evidence to link me to the crime, they had to release me. And that was the start of my journey into the world of Jinn. The next day, my uncle, Abdullah, held a funeral for my family, but only a few people came to offer their condolences. This was understandable due to the rumors spreading that my house was haunted and that Jinn had killed my family. To ease my burden, my uncle offered for me to live with him. But of course, I refused. I didn't want to endanger him and his family because of me. My uncle didn't pressure me or insist on his opinion so as not to add to my sorrows, handling my expenses and my schooling instead. 3 swift days passed, the funeral was over, and life returned to the house. The only one living with me was that young servant my uncle had brought in. At midnight, I decided to go to bed as I was feeling sleepy. I truly wanted to sleep after 3 days of not finding rest. How could I sleep knowing that I was the cause of my family's death? I finally surrendered to sleep, closed my eyes, and hardly a few seconds passed before I heard a whisper close to my ear. "Why are you sad? Didn't you wish for your family to disappear so you could connect with us better? We have made your wish come true." At first, I was very scared, and I couldn't move because of the fear, but after the voice faded away, all my fear left me, and a wide smile, a smile of joy and cunning, formed on my face. Yes, From the beginning, I wished for my family to vanish, and now my dream has come true. Why be sad? Sleep vanished from my eyes, and I opened my computer to look for the second part of the book to order it online because it was impossible for it to be found in libraries. After searching for more than an hour, I finally found it. I was very excited to read the book. All I could think about was what information it would contain this time. Would it provide more details about Jinn and their world, or would it contain a way to communicate with the other world? 5 days later, the book arrived at my house. I took it and rushed to the basement because it was the best place to hide the books in case the police suddenly showed up at the house, since the case was still unresolved. I opened the book and skimmed through it quickly, and that's when the surprise hit me. This book was completely different from the first issue. Its words were incomprehensible even though they were written in Arabic, and there were also strange symbols drawn on its pages. I went back to the book's introduction to read it and saw that it contained, "This edition is very limited. In fact, this is the only printed copy of this book, made specifically for the person who deserves it. Yes, it is you, the one reading this book now." You will notice that this book differs fundamentally from the previous edition, so do not worry. The strange words and symbols present here are to teach you how to communicate with Jinn and enter their world. In short, this book will teach you magic. I didn't finish reading the introduction because it was somewhat boring and long, but the important thing is that I understood the content of the book well. While I was reading and browsing through the book, a strange symbol caught my eye. It was a large star surrounded by 2 circles, and in the middle of the star was a drawn crescent moon. Although the symbol seemed normal, it fascinated me a lot. I didn't know why exactly. I brought some chalk and began to draw the circle on the basement floor, gathered all the necessary tools outlined in the book. And when I wanted to start the rituals, I heard the servant approaching, so I quickly hid my items, erased the drawing, and went to see what he wanted. When I asked him what he needed, he answered, "Dinner is ready." I looked at him with disdainful glances, which made me cancel all my rituals and erase the drawing for dinner. Then I smiled cunningly and returned to the basement, feeling that the servant was nearly terrified of me and my looks. I laughed maniacally at him and decided to start the rituals the next day. As usual, the following day I went to school, and it was the last day of classes. When the school day ended, I hurried home, not even taking off my school clothes. I descended into the basement, locked myself in, and then headed to the old iron box where I had stored my Jinn books. I opened the book and ignored the star symbol, deciding to start from the beginning of the book. I discovered a detailed explanation of how to connect with the Jinn world and talk to them, which was amazing as I had longed to speak with them instead of just reading about them. I indeed prepared the rituals and began to read those strange incantations. As I read, I noticed that the light was flickering on and off, and the items on the floor were moving as if an earthquake was shifting them, although the ground did not shake. As soon as I finished reciting the incantations, the lamp shattered. I started hearing strange sounds, a sound of children's laughter, crying, and the thing that terrified me the most was the sound of a woman screaming. I almost died of fear, but I managed to hold myself together. I felt something approaching me. How could there be someone in the basement when I was sure no one was home except the servant, who I saw cleaning the garden when I entered the house? I felt its steps getting closer. I was very scared and couldn't move from the fear. What's going to happen to me? Would they kill me like they killed my family? I want to escape. I want to get out of the basement. But my body wouldn't respond. It came very close. I started to hear its breathing. It put its head on my shoulder. I didn't have the courage to turn around and look at it, but I felt that its hair was long. "Is it a woman?" She whispered softly in my ear. "As I told you before, welcome to our world. Don't be afraid of us. Complete the rituals in the book if you want to live. Don't be afraid. How can you ask me not to be afraid while your mere presence scares me?" To give you some information about myself, I am easily frightened but also very curious. I was aware that there was a high possibility of this happening, but I couldn't curb my curiosity. I was extremely scared of that woman and the words she said. Would I die if I didn't complete all the rituals in the book? Am I crazy? I know that what I'm doing will lead me to hell, but what can I do? I can't restrain myself. In the end, I decided that I would complete all the rituals in the book, but this time I would make the servant come with me to the basement. But he would tell my uncle, even without me informing him about what is going on. He would eventually find out. It's only a matter of time. I have to get rid of him quickly before he uncovers my secret and exposes me. Yes, I must get rid of him. When evening came, I took all my books and threw them in the trash except for that book, which I kept in my room. Then I immediately returned to the basement to ensure that I had disposed of all the books related to the Jinn. I opened the box, and to my shock, all the books I had thrown away were in the box again. How did they come back? I was certain that I had thrown them away just a moment ago. Who returned them? Who knows my secret? Is it the servant? No, that's impossible. If he knew, he would have told my uncle. How could he return them so quickly? So who could it be? Could it be them? Is this a warning from them? But wait, wasn't I the one who wanted to contact them and talk to them? Why am I scared now? Okay, I'll finish the book and see what happens, even though I'm not optimistic that it will end badly. Suddenly, while I was thinking and talking to myself, that girl appeared again. But this time she was standing far away in the corner. I couldn't see her features well because her thick hair covered her face, and her strange stance was enough to instill fear in my heart. She said to me in a terrifying tone, "Surely the outcome will not be bad. All you have to do is complete the rituals." Then she laughed menacingly and loudly and vanished again. I rushed out to return to my room only to hear screams coming from the house. It was the voice of the servant. I ran quickly to him and found the kitchen on fire. We both ran outside, relieved that I had my phone with me, and I immediately called the fire department. It didn't take long for them to arrive with the police and an ambulance. The police tried to find out the reason for the fire. The servant answered them. I don't know. I was heading to the kitchen to grab a snack, and as soon as I stepped inside, the kitchen caught fire. It just ignited suddenly. I don't know why. After 2 hours, the matter was resolved, and we returned home. Thankfully, the fire was small. The servant didn't know the cause of the fire, but I was sure that I was the reason. I believed it was also a warning for me. I went to my room, feeling anxious, frightened about what the future held for me. I laid my head on the bed and fell asleep immediately because I was exhausted. But it hardly took minutes before I woke up to the bed shaking. It shook violently, and I could hear those strange sounds, the laughter of children and the screams of a woman from nowhere. However, after 2 minutes, everything disappeared, and the room returned to normal as if nothing had happened. I laid my head down once more to sleep, and this time nothing happened. I woke up early the next morning and immediately went back to the basement, carrying the book in my hands. It was 6:30 in the morning. I opened the book to proceed with the second ritual, but I was shocked by the requirement. It said that I had to not shower for 2 weeks, not shave, not cut my nails, and most importantly, I had to not meet any person during that time. I returned home and took a shower, shaved my beard and hair, and cut my nails. I did all these things because I wouldn't be able to do them for 2 weeks. Then I went to the servant and asked him not to communicate with me for 2 weeks and not to bring me food or anything. At first he was surprised by my request, but then he accepted it. I prepared all my supplies, packed some canned goods and water in my room, and locked myself in. Thankfully, my room had a bathroom, so it was the perfect place to keep myself confined. 2 weeks passed, during which I suffered greatly. I couldn't communicate with anyone or leave my room, plus the strange noises and events happening around me. Those 2 weeks were hell for me, but thank God I made it through them safely. I opened the cursed book again and was shocked by the new requirements. It said I must not shower ever or cut my hair. What? Are they joking? I'm not that dirty. Enough that I endured this for 2 weeks. I couldn't handle it any longer, so I went to the bathroom to shower and ignored all the warnings I had seen before. The moment I took off my shirt, I heard loud, strange noises. I stepped out of the bathroom to check on my room and saw the shock. All the furniture was shattered and the room was in disarray. I gathered my courage and went back to the bathroom. I didn't care what would happen. I had enough. I showered, shaved my hair and beard, and clipped my nails. After finishing everything, I exited the room, but what was happening? All the furniture in the house was ruined. I started running crazily through the house, then went outside to the garden, where I saw the servant sitting on the ground, trembling, looking like he might die from fear. I approached him and took his hand to calm him down a bit. The moment I held his hand, he hugged me tightly and began to cry. It was the first time I had seen him in this state since he started working for me. I started to pat him to comfort him. I cannot blame him. He is still just a young boy who hasn't reached 15. I waited until he calmed down a bit, then asked him what had happened. He replied, trembling in fear, "I don't know what happened. I swear to you I didn't break anything." After I finished cleaning, I sat in the living room to rest a bit, but suddenly, the items began to fly and fall to the ground and get destroyed. And there were also some things that I saw breaking in their place. Also, yes, I heard screaming sounds that were terrifying. I don't know where they came from. I replied with a smile while I was scared. "Don't worry. I promise you this will be the last time you see and hear these things." Hello, let me introduce myself. I am a servant who worked in the house of Mr. Mohammed. My name is Sultan, and I am 15 years old. Mr. Mohammed's house was very frightening. At the beginning, his family was killed under mysterious circumstances. The police couldn't discover the reason, and the case was closed. This is where my work in the house began at the order of his uncle, although I was hesitant and did not want to work there. Since my first day, I had been hearing strange sounds daily, but I ignored them and didn't tell my master so I wouldn't worry him. But what intrigued me the most was my master himself. He always spent all his time in the basement from the moment he woke up until he went to sleep. One day, he made a strange request. He told me that I shouldn't approach his room for 2 weeks. That was a long time, but I thought he wanted that because he was unsocial. Therefore, I accepted the matter. However, the catastrophe came after the 2 weeks passed. Suddenly, the furniture in the house began to break, and I started to hear strange and frightening sounds while I was in the living room. I immediately ran out of the house and went to the garden, sitting there. I couldn't move because of the fear and the terrifying scene I had witnessed. After a short while, my master came out of the house looking very frightened. He rushed towards me, so I jumped into his arms and started to cry. I did that instinctively, even though I was always afraid of him because of his looks. But I was surprised by what happened next. He began to pat my head, trying to calm me down and relieve my fear. I understood that he was also scared too. His breathing was rapid, and I could hear his breath, and he was trembling with fear. I kept my composure and calmed down a bit, and then he asked me about what had happened, and I told him everything. He replied with a smile, albeit still with a fearful expression. "Don't worry. I promise that this will be the last time you see and hear those things." Indeed, that was the last time. Just after my master finished his sentence, something I never expected happened. Suddenly, my master began to scream and moan as he held his hand over his heart. I tensed up and didn't know what to do. I sensed that something worse was about to happen, and indeed it did. My master dropped dead in front of me. He died before my eyes, and I couldn't do anything for him. I started crying hysterically. Even though my time with him was brief, I had grown attached to him, and now he was dead before me. Days passed, and news spread about my master's death. After autopsying him, the doctor said that the main cause of death was a heart attack. But could it really be a heart attack? Even if everyone believed this was the reason behind his death, I would never believe it after witnessing the strange things that happened before my eyes. I am sure that the truth behind it was completely different from what the doctor described, and I must discover it. After that, his uncle took me to work for him again in his house. After a few days had passed, I asked him for permission to go out, and he agreed. I rushed immediately to Mohammed's house and climbed over the wall since the door was locked. It was 8 in the evening. Once I entered the house, The first place I headed to was the basement, my master's favorite spot. The basement was very spacious, but it was also scary and dark, making me feel gloomy and melancholic. I started searching through everything there, hoping to uncover something. Something caught my attention. A strange box placed far away in the corner, covered with an old cloth. I approached it and removed the cloth. There was an ancient iron box underneath. When I attempted to open it, I found it locked. It's truly suspicious. I searched the entire basement for the key but found nothing. I left and headed to Mohammed's room. I don't know why, but I was sure I would find the key there. There's something I forgot to mention. After Mohammed's death, I mustered up my courage and decided to enter the house to retrieve the phone and inform his uncle about what had happened. But I was taken aback by what I saw. Every broken piece of furniture in the house had returned to its original state, as if I were dreaming. Here, I was convinced that the actual reason behind my master's family's deaths was not him or an unknown killer, but something far greater, much larger than him, and certainly not human. Back to my narrative, I went into Mohammed's room to look for any evidence and to search for the key. While I was searching, I found something that piqued my curiosity. It was a book filled with many pages titled The World of Jinn 2. I was astonished to find that book in the room and wondered if it had any connection to my master's death. I didn't dare to read the book. I just skimmed through its pages and was shocked by the drawings and strange symbols in it. They pointed towards methods of learning, magic and sorcery. Was he a sorcerer? While I was thinking, I noticed something shining on the table. I approached it and found a key that was large and clearly very old, covered with rust. I took the key and the book and returned to the basement. I went to the locked box and opened it, finding a large number of books inside it. However, these books weren't ordinary. They were also about Jinn. I took all the books out of the box to see if there was anything else and found a set of small tools. I examined them and realized they were chalk pieces, incense, 8 candles, and a small box. That box intrigued me, so I opened it. It contained blood. I didn't know to which creature that blood belonged, but the odor was truly terrible, so I closed it right away. It was then and there that I confirmed the real cause of Mohammed's and his family's deaths. It was all because of the Jinn. It appears that he had become a sorcerer, but I think he must have violated them in some way, and this was their revenge. I took the box outside and placed all the books related to Jinn inside, then burned them. I was surprised when the flames turned black. However, they quickly returned to their normal color. The books turned to ashes and it was all over. I thought about telling his uncle what had happened, but I hesitated. If my master wanted everyone to know his secret, he wouldn't have hidden the books. So I decided to keep the secret to myself.